Share Conference presents Anti-VJ.
Wow.
Hello everyone. So we're gonna tell you a little bit more about Anti-VJ. My name is Nicolas Boric. I run the Anti-VJ visual label with Joanny Lemercier. And I think we're just gonna tell you a little bit more about the label and the different kind of projects we've been working on the last few years. Joanny is gonna start by telling us a little bit more about the label and how and why we decided to structure ourselves as a label, a little bit like a music label, but promoting, producing, and visual artists rather than music artists. And I think Johnny is going to tell us a little bit more about his own practice as a visual artist as well, and how he uses technology in his work. And finally, Simon Gelfus, another artist on the label, is going to tell us more about his work as a software developer, and maybe tell us a little bit more about how open source community help him and us to be where we are today. And finally, if we have enough time, we're going to show you a little video of a very recent project we just finished a couple of months ago. So we're quite excited to show you that video, which is not released yet. So see you in a bit.
Hello everyone. First I have to say that I'm well impressed to be on the stage here, because we came last year, we were invited to do the Murkoff show with Simon Gelfus, who did the visual. So maybe some of you saw the audiovisual performance that we did in this very same room. And we attended many of the conferences, and we were really impressed and blown away by the quality of the talks and the ideas that came out. And so we kept really amazing memories from the festival, and also from the like level and lineup of everything. So being here right now is a bit of a weird exercise, because we're not really activists in the way we've been so impressed by many of the talks. So our work is mostly based around projection of light in three-dimensional space. So I'm going to explain a bit more how we started the label, and then show a few projects. And also, I'm going to try to share as much of the insight as possible, and explain how it works backstage, and also the way we want to share more of our content in the near future, because we feel it's something that's probably gonna define how visual arts and creative coding can influence our work in the future. So maybe I'm going to start by the very beginning. I'm French. I moved to Bristol about 8 years ago, and I was working as a graphic designer. And then, as a hobby, I started doing projections in clubs and in festivals. I was doing VJing, but really like as a hobby on a flat rectangular screen. Did that for a few years, and then I started being really excited by the idea of going further and using the same video projectors, but for projection onto objects, onto transparent materials, and onto like any canvas that is different than the flat rectangular screen. So I'm going to start, by this project. There was more an experiment, really, that I did several years ago. So most of these projects kind of started in my bedroom. I had this small video projector that I would use for VJing, and then at home I would do experiments with origamis and like really simple structures, and using the video projector to light them up. And so I don't think we need the sound. I just want to show you the principle. So that's how I started projection mapping. So now you probably all heard about the technique of projection mapping that is widely used in architectural projection at the moment, and there are like many projects. More and more projects, and it's really interesting to see the scene and the community growing, and to see a lot of content. So this is super basic. It was, as I say, more of an experiment. And the idea is, with a single projector, you send the light so it matches the canvas you're projecting on. So it's a basic idea, but you can use that on many kind of structures and many different contexts. So this is my first kind of architectural projection. It's very dark, so it's hard to see. Maybe the light is gonna dim out a little bit. But this was basically my neighbor's house opposite the street. So I've put my my projector in my room, and I was projecting through the window. And it's super simple. I was just projecting triangles and rectangles to match the architecture. And what I was really blown away in the way that people would come back from work and they had no idea how this would work, so they started gathering around and asking themselves, oh, how does this work? And they started touching the walls to try to understand what was going on. So I think at that point there was something that kind of appealed to me to be almost a bit kind of magical, and I really wanted to go that way. So so then that kind of became my job and my main interest. That was 6 years ago, I guess. And I was also organizing an event, a club night event with Nico. We were both based in Bristol, and we started doing this club night where we would invite like really good electronic music producers or musicians, and also we would pay attention to the visuals and to the installation every time. So that's how I met many VJs at the time. I was trying to curate the visual aspect. So I discovered this guy, Yannick Jacquet. He's a visual artist from Switzerland. And when I saw this piece called 3D Struct, the video you're actually seeing now is a new version of 3D Struct. But I saw something very similar 6 years ago, and then I was convinced that I wanted to get away from the flat rectangular screen that has many constraints, and that I wanted to use the light in a three-dimensional space. So I'm not going to show the whole video because I'm going to try to be a bit concise, but basically this is netting, so transparent material that was used to build this big cube, and we used several video projectors to animate the space, and the audience could actually go inside the cube. So yeah, this kind of three-dimensional display and also very immersive display. The fact that you could be surrounded by light and you would have a completely different approach to the visual piece. So I was the day I saw this piece, I realized I wanted to work with this guy and do something together. So that's pretty much when the idea of creating this visual label started. So we met many times, and then we got together to work on bigger projects. So that's pretty much when AntiVJ started. We gathered around and tried to work on collaborative ideas or collaborative projects. So we tried to, as Nico mentioned, we tried to call ourselves, or we want to go in that direction of working as a visual label rather than a collective or an agency or any other kind of structure. We really like the way record label works. They have a kind of artistic direction and a style that is really associated to this label. And then they work with different artists, which also they all have a very specific style and specific approach to music, and something really personal and kind of individual as well. So we like this idea of using AntiVJ to promote and produce the work of visual artists. We sometimes do collaborative projects all together for like architectural stuff, but it's mostly we also do individual project, and the idea is to push the individual artist work. So we are actually 7 on the label. At the moment, 5 visual artists. So the first one, I'll show you. Donc Yannick Jacquet, who did the 3D Struct piece, and his work is very much around industrial building, and we like to fragment space and time. And so Joanie Lemercier, this is myself. All my work is mostly based on white lines, grids, and squares. I don't know why I can't get away from these different shapes, but that's all I do, just lines, squares, triangles. I'm thinking about starting adding some colors at some point, but that's going to be a huge gap for me, so that's my style. Olivier Razzi, another artist of the label, his background is more photography, and he did this series called On Architecture, where he's taking pictures of the surrounding of big cities, and then he's editing the pictures to create this, On Architecture, as he calls this work, where also like Yannick, he likes to play with time and space. Romain Tardy, which has a fantastic, really interesting style as well. He loves to work more with figurative elements, characters, animals, and if you, I won't have time to show probably the work of all the artists, but we've got loads of documentation on the website, so you can have a look and you will probably spot the different style. Simon Gelfus, who's right there, you probably might recognize a screenshot from the Murkoff show, which was mostly based on creative coding and like a specific software that Simon had to create to be able to do what he had in mind. So it came from an idea, a story, and some narratives, and we realized that doing this with existing tools wasn't quite possible. So that's why the Murkoff project took that route, and what you can see here is like a particle system. We'll talk a bit more about it in a minute. And so that's the whole team, visual artists. We work with Thomas Vaquier for the music. He's an amazing sound designer and music producer, and without him the label would be very different, and we realized how important the use of music and also producing specific music for specific pieces makes such a big difference. That's us kind of posing. We don't really like this photo actually because it's a bit, it's in the dark, it's better, but we kind of posing. But that's the first installation we did all together for the Mapping Festival in Geneva, probably 5 years ago or something. And the idea was to project on this kind of large-scale structure and play with light and perceptions. And so this is kind of important picture for us, even if we don't quite like it, because it's the first time we all got together and we kind of shared ideas and realized that we could do many things together. So the label does roughly like 4 types of projects, which are, the first one would be installations. We do like the one you just saw, like this one was called Light Sculpture. It's something we present in galleries or in sometime in public space as well, but it's more some kind of installation work. This piece was inspired by the Icelandic volcano which erupted in 2010 and was presented in at MPAC in New York State, and this is also a kind of installation format. The second type of work we do, and that is kind of very popular online, that really helped us to grow the label, is architectural projections. We really like to play with the perception you have of the architecture and like kind of modify the structure of the building we work with, another project in the same field. We also do audiovisual projects on stage, like the Murkoff project that we showed here last year. We also did this collaboration with a French band called Principles of Geometry, and that was the opportunity for us to play around with stereoscopy and 3D projections. We're using the exact same technique that's been used in IMAX cinemas with polarized glasses and actually real-time content. So there was 3 musicians on stage and this big screen at the back, and I think for me the best moment was to be on stage and to see the whole audience with these weird 3D glasses. That was kind of my favorite moment, when to have this kind of view of the audience. And we also do stage design, so we design structures and we do collaborate with designers or architects, like we did for Nuit Sonore in Lyon a few years ago. So here the structure wasn't specific to a single artist. It was more a design for the whole festival, something that would be maybe more interesting than just a big screen with VJing at the back. So we did these few projects at the beginning. We did quite a few, and it went quite well. We were experimenting still with the mapping. It was very new for us. It was very difficult to find any documentation or any kind of tutorials to do things, so we kind of had to find out and made our own kind of rules. And I think a really important project for me was this project we did in Breda in Netherlands. It's a large cathedral, and we were invited to do an audiovisual performance there for the Night of Culture a few years ago, 2009. And we were so impressed by the structure and the building itself that we knew that we just couldn't do the usual explosions and light effects. We wanted something a bit more deep, or we needed some inspiration as well. So we spent loads of time trying to find out about the history of the building, trying to understand the surroundings, trying to understand the history of the city as well, so we could bring something more than just nice flashy visuals. And I think that's the first time that we spent probably almost a month just working on the narratives, making sure the approach was inspiring for everyone. And the result is a projection on this large organ, and also on 3 screens that we've put at the bottom. Maybe we can dim the lights a little more because it was a very dark place. And we also had the opportunity to use the organ with a musician who played the organ live at the end of the piece, and he played a piece from Messiaen and a piece from Philip Glass. And having, so we had some kind of a sound design for the beginning of the piece, and at the end the kind of climax was the live music coming from the organ, and actually being able to see the organ kind of alive with the projection mapped onto it, and hear the sound coming from the same pipes. Yeah, it was a really unique experience, and from that moment, from that piece we did, now we always are really careful about the narratives and how we start a project. We know that there are tricks that are being used all the time in projection mapping, and we know that we try to avoid to do the same thing over and over again. So before we start the production, we just get like a blank piece of paper, and we try to write a story and bring some narratives that would kind of enhance the experience. Again, that's a bit of a long piece, so I'm not going to play it all. We kind of still use sometimes the explosion trick, if you see what I mean, but actually it had a meaning because the organ was taken down during the war, and the pipes were hidden in a basement of a flat, a house in the surroundings. So as the organ was taken down at some point in its history, we wanted to kind of tell that story in a visual way. And this was representing the iconoclast period, when all the statues, all the paintings, and all the representation of saints has been taken down and broken and disappeared. So actually, that was the first piece where we can really tell why we did all these visuals. There was a story behind, and now it's really important for us to start from a story, start from narratives, and then we try to see and find out what we can do with this. But we don't want the technology to be an excuse to do flashy, nice visuals, and I think we get to a point where we understand how narrative is so important.
I'm just interrupting because we don't have a clock on the computer, so I just want to check how long we've got left, if someone can tell us.
So just a few pictures of the organ.
3 minutes? 10? 10? Cool, thanks.
10? Okay. Cool. So I think it's probably time to move on. So yeah, as you can see, the organ was well impressive and really inspiring for us. Wanted to show you really briefly how projection mapping works in like 1 minute. That's kind of the old school technique that we were using at the time. Now we're working with new technologies and other things that are going to change completely the way we produce. That's going to be the end of the talk, I think. But every time we do a projection mapping, we try to bring all the kits on site, and we would redraw the architecture through the lens of the projector. So that's, for us, it was the only way to get like a pixel perfect mapping, where you don't even have to think about lens distortion or perspective. You just draw through the lens, and that's called the master file for the mapping. That's what you see here. And once we have that master file, so this is with the photography overlaid, but this is what we use as a master. Once we have this file, we can go back to the studio and start the production. But this file for us is really important. It's really space dependent, because this is a mapping from a single point in space. So we have to put the projector at the exact same position when we actually do the event. That's how we work when we write the narratives. We start with the story, and then we try to find some kind of rhythm and evolution, and we know there will be peaks and climaxes. With the organ was one at the end. That peak you can see here is the live organist playing the Philip Glass song. And that brings me to the next point, research and development. As we mentioned, when we started, we had to kind of hack existing softwares to do projection mapping, because you couldn't download any projection mapping tools. So we would juggle with the classic, well-known graphic design tools that were actually made and built and designed to make websites and menus and stuff. And we had to use these to to do projection mapping, which was a bit weird because then you realize how all the constraints you have when you work with this kind of tools, and then we felt that it wasn't quite right. Even if it worked at the time, we felt like we could go so much further with software development. And I think that's pretty much the point where we met with Simon, who was already experimenting a lot and using open source tools and libraries to be able to do real-time visuals. So this is slightly off topic, but that was the kind of introduction to the R&D stuff I wanted to talk to you. As I said earlier on, the core of the label at the moment is perception and light in 3D space, and the influence of light on visual perception, and how the world we perceive around us is visually we just perceive light. It's either light emitted by a light source or bouncing off an object. But basically, the way we visually perceive the world is just light. And then, if you use a video projector, you can use light to modify the surroundings. So you can add a layer of light and modify the way you kind of perceive reality in a way. So I'm really fascinated by this idea that with technology, you can change the way we perceive the world. And this experiment was a stereoscopic projection with the face tracking. So it was like, 3D visuals projected with 2 projectors. The problem with this is when you move, it looks really weird and the vanishing point doesn't move. So the idea here was to use face tracking. So you would have that 3D object, and while you move, it would stay where it's supposed to be in space, in the reality. And that experience, we didn't actually use that for an actual project, but that experience was so impressive. Well, just seeing the thing and get to the point when the brain doesn't really understand and can't really tell what's real or not and where the real space is. And that's something I really want to explore in the future, like try to get to the boundary, onto the edge where the brain doesn't really understand. So maybe we can, the stereoscopic projection was just an experiment that didn't go further, and now we're going to talk about the different tools and the development that Simon does.
Yeah, so as Johnny said, part developer and part artist on the label. So I think we could say that I'm some sort of product of all this sharing energy, because I've never been to college or university. So yeah, basically all the things I know today and all the skills I use in my work every day are things I have learned through open source communities. I've started working with processing like almost 10 years ago, I think. And yeah, I think without all those open source initiatives, we won't be doing the work we do today, because as Joanny was explaining, research and engineering is still a core, a part of our creative process, because we like to hack things and to find our